9 top players on the PGA Tour have threatened to walk away. Not 1, not 2, 9. These aren't guys fighting to keep their cards. These are the names that fill leaderboards. The guys you tune in to watch every Sunday. Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth. Names that move the needle, and they're ready to leave. Not for LIV, not for more money. They're threatening to withdraw from the tour itself over something that has nothing to do with Saudi Arabia or contract offers. It has everything to do with the man sitting in the commissioner's office. Brian Rolapp came in with a corporate playbook, and he's been making changes that have the locker room boiling over. Field sizes cut, tour cards slashed, a 2-tier system that turns the tour into a ladder instead of a meritocracy. The players have had enough, and now they've drawn a line. They're saying if these mandates don't change, they're gone. But here's what makes this different from every other player complaint you've heard before. This isn't a press conference grumble. This isn't a tweet. This is a coordinated threat from the most powerful players in the game, delivered directly to the people who run the sport. And it's happening at the worst possible time. The US Open is weeks away. The tour's biggest events are on the line, and nobody knows if these players are actually going to follow through. One question no one can answer yet. What did the commissioner actually do to push the best players in the world to this breaking point? My take: these players have every right to be furious. Do you think they're overreacting, or is Rolapp taking this too far? Drop your take in the comments. That question about what Rolapp actually did starts with understanding who he is and why he's different from every commissioner who came before him. Brian Rolapp didn't come from golf. He came from the NFL. 20 years in football's corporate machine, running media deals and business strategy. He negotiated billion-dollar broadcast contracts. He structured sponsorship packages. He turned the NFL's media operation into a money-printing machine. When he took over as the PGA Tour's CEO in 2025 and became commissioner in January 2026, the message was clear. The tour wasn't going to be run like a country club anymore. It was going to be run like a business. Maximum profit, minimum waste. The problem is, golfers aren't football players. They're independent contractors who built their careers on merit. Rolapp's approach treats them like employees. Right away, the changes came fast. Field sizes cut. Tour cards reduced. Every move seemed designed to create scarcity, to make the tour more exclusive and profitable. The decisions were made in boardrooms, not locker rooms. But the breaking point didn't come from one decision. It came from a pattern. But here's what made the players finally draw a line. It wasn't just one mandate that pushed them over the edge. It was the one that hit them where it hurts the most: their careers. Let's talk about what Rolapp actually did. First, the tour cards. For decades, the top 125 players on the FedEx Cup standings kept full status for the next season. Rolapp cut that number to 100. 25 players who used to have guaranteed status now have nothing. 25 careers thrown into uncertainty. The official explanation was pace of play. Lucas Glover called that explanation insulting. Matt Fitzpatrick backed him up, saying it was pathetic that the pace of play issue comes up every year and nothing ever gets done. But the tour card cut wasn't the only change. Field sizes at full events dropped from 156 to 144. Smaller events shrank from 132 to 120. Fewer spots, fewer opportunities. Then came the 2-tier system. Starting in 2028, the tour will split into a championship series for the top players and a challenger series for everyone else, with promotion and relegation between them. What it actually does is create a permanent underclass. The gap between the haves and have-nots becomes official. The tour calls this a meritocracy, but the players see it differently. They see a system that protects the elite while making it harder for everyone else to break through. And they see a system that was designed without their input. That's what makes this so frustrating. It's not just that the changes are bad. It's that nobody asked them, and that sends a message. The tour sees them as assets, not partners. And that's when the best players in the world started realizing something terrifying. If this can happen to the guys at the bottom, nobody is safe. Because here's the thing about the 2-tier system. It's not just about the players on the outside. The top players started asking themselves a question. If Rolapp is willing to cut 25 tour cards and create a 2-tier system without consulting anyone, what's stopping him from doing the same thing to the elite players? What's stopping him from cutting the number of signature events? What's stopping him from telling the best players when and where they have to play? That's the fear spreading through the locker room. They're watching a businessman from the NFL reshape their game without asking for their input. Some of them have already started skipping events. Rory McIlroy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander Schauffele, Robert McIntyre, and Ludwig Aberg all sat out the Cadillac Championship earlier this year. The Cadillac Championship is a signature event, and when 5 of the best players in the world decide they'd rather not be there, it sends a clear signal. But if the players don't show up, those events mean nothing. The sponsors and TV networks want the stars, and when the stars start staying home, the whole system starts to crack. That's what the players are counting on. They know that without them, the tour's business model doesn't work. But the real question isn't just about what Rolapp did, it's about who stepped up to stop him. 9 players, 9 of the biggest names in golf. And when you hear who they are, you'll understand why this isn't just another player complaint. Let's start with the first one. Scottie Scheffler, the world number 1, the guy who's won 4 majors. Scheffler isn't the type to make noise. When Scottie Scheffler speaks, he chooses his words carefully. So when word got out that Scheffler was part of this group, the entire golf world took notice. His frustration isn't just about the mandates themselves, it's about what they represent. Scheffler has always believed that golf should reward skill above everything else. And the 2-tier system, the tour card cuts, all of it, he sees as moving the game away from that principle. He's been public about his concerns. At the 2025 PGA Championship, he was frustrated with course setup decisions that turned a skills competition into a lottery. He said the best players weren't being rewarded the way they should be. He wanted the course to test shot making, not luck, and he said so publicly. And now, with Rolapp's mandates, he sees the same problem on a much bigger scale. The tour is no longer rewarding the best players. It's creating a system where corporate decisions matter more than performance. Scheffler has always been a player who lets his clubs do the talking. He doesn't seek out conflict. But when he does speak up, people listen. And the fact that he's willing to be part of this threat tells you how serious the situation has become. Scheffler isn't a complainer, he's a winner. He's the best player in the world. And when the best player in the world says the system is broken, it's not just talk. It's a warning. Scottie Scheffler alone would have been enough to make the tour nervous. But he's not the only one. And the next name on the list makes the threat even harder to ignore. Justin Thomas is the second player, a major champion. Thomas is more vocal than Scheffler. When the USGA announced the golf ball rollback, Thomas called it selfish and said it was bad for the game. He famously asked whether they would make a mile longer so the fastest mile time doesn't change, or raise the NBA hoop because players can jump higher. That's the kind of unfiltered criticism Thomas brings. And he's been just as direct about Rolapp's mandates. He's been talking to other players. He's been organizing. Thomas isn't just a complainer. He's a leader. And when he's willing to threaten withdrawal, other players take notice. He understands that the cuts don't just affect the guys at the bottom. They affect everyone. Thomas has been on the tour long enough to see how quickly things can change. He's not just fighting for himself. He's fighting for the players who will be trying to make it on the tour 10 years from now. Thomas has always been one of the most respected voices in the locker room. And when he speaks, other players listen. 2 of the biggest names have made their positions clear, but the third name might be the most surprising of all. Jordan Spieth. 3-time major winner, one of the most beloved players on tour. Spieth wears his emotions on his sleeve. He gives honest interviews and doesn't hide his feelings. He hasn't been as vocal as Thomas, but he's been making his frustration known behind the scenes. Spieth has a unique perspective because he's been on the tour since he was a teenager. He's seen the game change dramatically. He's seen the players lose more and more control over their own careers. The 2-tier system, the tour card cuts, the field size reductions, he sees all of it as a step backward. He believes the players should have a seat at the table. Spieth has always been a player who cares deeply about the game. And seeing the game he loves being turned into a corporate product has been deeply frustrating for him. He's been pushing for more player involvement in decision-making, and when that didn't work, he started supporting the idea of a more aggressive response. Spieth knows that he has a platform. He knows that people listen when he speaks, and he's using that platform to fight for what he believes is right. 3 players so far, But the list doesn't stop there, and each new name adds weight to a threat that's already starting to feel real. Patrick Cantlay, one of the most consistent players on tour. Cantlay isn't the most vocal. He doesn't give many interviews, but when he makes a decision, he sticks to it. He's been part of the player meetings. He's supported the threat. Cantlay represents the players who don't usually make waves. When someone like that is willing to threaten withdrawal, it means the frustration is real. Xander Schauffele is another name, a gold medalist, a major winner. Schauffele has been open about his concerns. He's expressed frustration with the lack of player input. He's made it clear he's willing to take a stand. Schauffele has always been one of the more thoughtful players on tour, so when he says he's frustrated, it means he's been thinking about it for a long time. He's been part of the conversations about the two-tier system and the tour card cuts, and he's come to the conclusion that the players need to take a stand. Collin Morikawa is another, two-time major champion. He's talked about how the tour needs to listen to the players. He's talked about how the corporate approach is hurting the sport. Morikawa is young, but he's already accomplished more than most players do in a lifetime. He has a long career ahead of him, and he's not willing to spend that career in a system he doesn't believe in. Viktor Hovland is the 8th name, the rising star from Norway. Hovland has talked about how the players feel like they're being treated as labor, not partners. He's made it clear he's willing to take a stand. Hovland represents the next generation of players. He's one of the most popular young players on tour, and his involvement in this threat sends a message that the frustration isn't just coming from the veterans, it's coming from the players who will be the face of the tour for the next 20 years. That's 8 names, but the 9th name is the one that makes this whole thing feel like a nightmare for the tour. Tiger Woods, the greatest player of his generation, the most recognizable name in golf. When Tiger speaks, the golf world listens. When Tiger acts, the golf world follows. And Tiger has made it clear that he supports the players. He's been involved in the strategy. He's been in the rooms where the decisions are being made. He's been on the phone calls. He's been shaping the language of the threat itself. His presence changes everything. Tiger has always fought for the interests of the players. And now, at the end of his career, he's making a final stand. He's using his influence, his credibility, his legacy to support the players who are threatening to walk. Tiger alongside Scheffler, Thomas, Spieth, Cantlay, Schauffele, Morikawa, Hovland, and the 9th player, that's a force the tour cannot ignore. Tiger has always been more than just a player. He's been the standard that everyone else measures themselves against. And when he takes a stand, it reverberates through the entire sport. He's not just speaking for himself. He's speaking for everyone who has ever felt like the tour wasn't listening. He's speaking for the players who came before him and the players who will come after. That's 9 names, 9 of the most powerful players in the sport. And the threat they've made is more serious than anything we've seen before. So what exactly did they threaten? The players delivered a message directly to the commissioner's office. They said the mandates need to be rolled back or they're gone from the entire tour. They're willing to withdraw their memberships. The message was the same. Roll it back or we're gone. The timing is significant. The US Open is just weeks away. It's one of the biggest events of the year, and the players are threatening to withdraw right before it happens. That's a calculated move designed to put maximum pressure on the tour. The players want the tour to know that they're willing to disrupt the biggest moments of the season. They want the tour to know that they're serious. The US Open is a major championship. It's one of the 4 events that every player wants to win, and the players are willing to skip it if they have to. That's how serious they are. They're willing to sacrifice their chance at history to make a point. And that should terrify the people running the tour. That threat alone would have been enough to shake the tour to its foundation. But what happened next made everything before it look minor. Because here's the part that makes this different. The players have leverage. And not just the leverage of being the best in the world, they have options. Live Golf is still there. The Saudi-funded league didn't disappear. The same players who rejected LIV's offers are now looking at the tour and wondering if they made the right call. They stayed loyal. And now that institution is treating them like interchangeable parts. The loyalty they showed is being repaid with mandates they never agreed to. Rolapp offered Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, and Cameron Smith a path back to the tour earlier this year. He gave them 3 weeks to decide. None took the offer. The returning members program has caused resentment among the players who stayed loyal. They see players who left being welcomed back, while the players who stayed are being squeezed by mandates and cuts. It's a message that loyalty doesn't matter. If you're not useful, you're disposable. That's how the players feel. That's why they're willing to walk. Because if the best players in the world decide to walk, what happens to the tour? What happens to the events, the sponsors, the TV deals, the fans? Think about it. If Scheffler, Thomas, Spieth, and the others follow through, the signature events lose their star power. Sponsors paid hundreds of millions for access to those players. TV networks built their schedules around those names. If those names disappear, the money disappears. The tour's entire business model collapses without the players who make it valuable. The corporate mandates designed to make the tour more profitable might actually destroy the very thing that makes it profitable. The players aren't just threatening to leave, they're threatening to take the tour's economic foundation with them. The Genesis Invitational without Scheffler. The Memorial without Thomas. The Players' Championship without the guys who make it must-see TV. These events become shadows of what they used to be. And the fans who tune in every week will notice. They'll notice that their favorite players aren't there. They'll notice that the competition isn't as strong. And they'll start to lose interest. The tour has spent decades building its brand. It's spent decades cultivating relationships with fans. And all of that could be undone in a matter of weeks. But what would actually happen if they walked? Let's paint the picture. The 9 players withdraw. The tour loses its biggest draws. Signature events have half the star power. TV ratings plummet. Sponsors start asking questions. The ones who signed long-term deals look for escape clauses. The tour's revenue takes a massive hit. Merchandise sales drop. Ticket sales at events crater. The entire ecosystem that feeds off those 9 names starts to dry up. The players who stayed find themselves playing on a tour that's lost its biggest stars. Other players start thinking about their options. The tour fractures not because of outside competition, but because of internal implosion. And the fans? They're left with a tour that doesn't look anything like the one they grew up loving. And the tour finds itself fighting for survival. It's a scenario that's becoming more possible every day. That's the nightmare scenario keeping tour executives up at night. Because the 9 players aren't bluffing, at least not all of them. They've watched the commissioner, a guy who never played competitive golf, tell them how the game should be played. And they've reached the point where they're willing to test whether the tour really needs them more than they need the tour. The answer is that the tour needs them a lot more. The players can go to live, they can play overseas, they can create their own events. The tour, without those players, doesn't have the same options. The tour needs the stars, the players who fill the leaderboards and sell the tickets. And the players know that. That's why they're making this threat. That's why they're willing to follow through. They know that the tour can't afford to lose them. And they're willing to test that theory. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous for the future of professional golf. Because it's not just about 9 players and a few mandates. It's about the entire relationship between the players and the people who run the sport. For decades, that relationship was built on trust. That trust is now broken. Both sides are digging in. Neither seems willing to back down. That's the real crisis. The moment when the players stopped believing the tour had their best interests at heart. And the result is the threat that's now hanging over the entire sport. The players have drawn a line in the sand. The tour has to decide whether to cross it, and whatever happens next will determine the future of professional golf. 9 players, 1 commissioner, and a game that's being pulled in 2 completely different directions. So what happens next? The US Open is coming. The players are still playing, for now. But the threat is still there. Nobody knows whether the players will actually follow through or whether the tour will blink first. The dynamics of the sport have changed forever. The players have drawn a line. The commissioner has a choice. He can roll back the mandates and restore trust. He can keep pushing forward and risk losing the best players in the world. Or he can try to find middle ground that satisfies nobody. The clock is ticking. Every sponsor meeting, every broadcast negotiation, every player conversation is happening under the shadow of this threat. And every day that passes without a resolution makes the situation more volatile. Even if the mandates are rolled back, the trust that was broken won't magically reappear. What replaces it will determine the future of professional golf. For now, all we can do is watch and wait to see who blinks first. The sport we grew up watching is changing, and the people who love it, the fans who tune in every week, are along for the ride whether they like it or not. And if you want to stay on top of this story as it unfolds, hit that subscribe button, because this is far from over, and the biggest moments are still ahead.